Thank you, brother.
Thank you, John.
All right. I'm not a SoCal bro. NorCal. They're very different. California is a big state, and that's an insult to call someone from Northern California a SoCal bro. But thank you, Warren, for having me here. I'm really happy to be here with you guys. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my story and my journey as a football player, because I'm looking out at all you guys, and you're all on your own journey. I think it's important to remember that you have your own identity, you have your own journey, whether it's just football, whether it's another sport, whether it's life. Don't compare yourself to someone else. If it doesn't work out exactly how it's supposed to at first, but you believe in it, well then keep going towards what you believe in. When I was a little kid, I grew up in the Bay Area, and I was a 49er fan. Huge 49er fan, had posters up on my wall. Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, those guys. I told my mom and everybody who listened to me, I'm gonna play in the NFL when I was a little kid. And nobody believed me. My parents wouldn't let me play football until I got to high school. My parents were both school teachers and were worried about, the dangerous sport of football, and they wouldn't let me play. So I was playing out in the street, I was playing at the park, I was a swimmer, I was a competitive swimmer, and I was a soccer player. But I played football with my buddies out in the park, and that was it. It wasn't until I got to freshman year of high school that I put on the pads and I put on a helmet. And the first time you do that, it's a lot different. It's a lot different from playing with your buddies at the park. All of a sudden, the helmet comes on, the mouthpiece goes in, shoulder pads, and you start cracking helmets. It's very, very different. I played running back my freshman year, and I hadn't hit puberty yet. So I was 5'7", 130 pounds freshman year. And you guys know sometimes you're on a team with guys who have hit puberty, and you have not, and you're at a disadvantage. And so I didn't get any playing time that year. We went 0-9, and everything went wrong for our team all year long. In fact, the last game of the season, we were playing against another 0-8 team. Our coach was furious that we were so bad, and he said in advance of that game, they're the shits, we're the shits, we're gonna have a shit bowl. And we lost the shit bowl, so we went 0-9 that year. And so went back my sophomore year, and I didn't want to play running back anymore. I wanted to play quarterback. I thought I could throw the ball, and I wanted to be a quarterback. I mean, who doesn't want to be a quarterback? Joe Montana was my hero. So I started playing quarterback, but I was backing up my buddy. My buddy was the starter, and I did not win the starting role, so I was just sitting on the bench all year. The one game I did start that year, he had an accident making some Halloween costume and cut his hand, and so he couldn't play in the game, and so I played against the first team in the division. We were last. I threw 3 interceptions. We lost 35-0, and that's the only game I've ever played at quarterback. So he came back the next week, a couple weeks later. It was the end of the season, and I thought, you're going to be the quarterback here for the next 3 years. If I want to play, I got to play a different position. So I'm going to play receiver. So the very last game of my sophomore year is my first game as a wide receiver. And I caught one pass. I caught a hitch, 5-yard hitch, and I took it for 10 yards. And when I don't know what happened to the game. I don't know if we won it or not. But I watched the film later because my dad used to sit up in the stands filming us. And I watched the film, and it was a high ball. I went up and caught it. A guy came, and I juked the guy, and I came down the line of scrimmage, tried to juke another guy. I got tackled. But the point is that I don't remember. I don't remember that the ball was high. I don't remember that I juked a guy. And at that moment, I realized that there's something that happens on a football field that's beyond your consciousness. You're not making decisions to juke a guy. It's just happening. You're getting pulled into this moment. And that's when I really, really fell in love with the game of football, because things happen on the football field that defy the laws of nature. That was the last game of the season, my junior year. I was a receiver. I started, caught a touchdown my first game, and then I was off and running as a receiver. But I played at a school that ran the wing T offense, which is not a receiver's dream. There's one receiver on the field, 3 running backs, and it's, misdirection, option running game, and the receiver doesn't get a lot of action. So I don't know how many catches I had that year, 29, 39, something like that. Did not get recruited at all out of high school. So I walked on at Division I AA school called Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And at the time, I had sent my tape into the coach, and he said, we like what you can do, Nate. I can't offer you any kind of scholarship. Love to have you as a walk-on. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to Cal Poly. So I committed to that school. I went to an orientation at the end of my senior year with my dad. And 2 days before I went to that orientation, the head coach that I had talked to left the school. He got hired as an assistant in the NFL. His name's Andre Patterson. He's still an assistant in the NFL to this day. This was 1997. So he was gone, and there was a new guy there. And this guy was named Larry Welsh, and he was just a California old school coach. And I walked up to him, I explained the situation that I had talked to Andre Patterson. He wanted me to walk on, and he said, son, we don't really have any room for that. So I suggest you just come to school, get used to being a student, and walk on at the end of your freshman year. So I had nothing to base it on. I said, okay, I guess that's what I have to do. So I went to school my first year, my freshman year of college, expected to play football, and I didn't play any football. I was watching the games. I was hanging out with my buddies. I joined a fraternity. I was partying. I was just trying to be a college kid, but I wasn't playing football. And like he said, like Larry Welsh said, at the end of my freshman year, you walk on then. So I walked on at the end of my freshman year, went through all the winter workouts and spring ball. And at the end of that end of spring ball, I got cut. He said, you're too slow to play receiver. You're too small to play tight end. No room for you on this team, kid. Sorry. And so I went home for the summer, devastated, not knowing what I was going to do with my life. Because football is what I wanted to do. I was an athlete. I felt it in my bones. But I went back there my sophomore year, again, just a student in a fraternity, partying and having fun. But something was missing clearly from my life. And so I reached out to my high school coach, told him what I was feeling, and he told me about this D3 school called Menlo College, which was basically 45 minutes away from where I grew up, but I had never heard of it. 500 students at the school, right down the street from Stanford. You could drive past it on the road and not even know it was there. But he put me in contact with a coach, and I started having a relationship with a coach and talking, and he was trying to get me warmed up to transfer. And I went on a visit there, and I just kind of fell in love with the way I felt there. I fell in love with the campus. It was a very small school, and I had been at Cal Poly, which was bigger. That was 16,000 students, and then you go to class, and it's an auditorium, and your professor doesn't even see you. You don't even have to go to class. They don't even know if you're not there. It was a very anonymous life, and of course I didn't have football. So I wanted a purpose, and I wanted something to believe in and something to care about. So I made the decision to transfer to this tiny school. And all my friends at Cal Poly thought I was crazy, They had never heard of the school. We had a fun time going there. But I made that decision because I felt it. And a lot of times, and you guys are going to encounter this, some of you guys are going to go to a school you think is going to work out, and it's just not going to feel right. It's not going to be right. Whether you're not going to get along with your coach, or something's going to feel weird on campus, or you're on the bench and you're not playing. You got to be able to listen to your heart in those moments and understand when it's right to leave a situation that you thought would be ideal but isn't. So don't be married to the plan you have in your head right now. It's going to change no matter what. It's not going to work out the way you hope. But if you stay focused on what you believe in, the right thing does happen. So the right thing for me was to transfer. It was the hard thing, but it was the right thing. So I ended up playing 3 years at Menlo College. We had a bunch of coaches there who played in the NFL. I'm going to throw out some names that you might not know, but Ken Marjoram was a receiver at Stanford and played with the 85 Bears. He was a coach there. Doug Cosby, who was a tight end for the Cowboys, all-pro guy, he was a coach there. Guy McIntyre was an offensive lineman for the Niners. He was a coach there. Tom Rathman was a fullback for the 49ers. He was a coach there. Keith Millard was a defensive end for the Vikings back in the day. He was our defensive coordinator. We had all this former NFL talent at this D3 school. But not only that, Bill Walsh, who was kind of the architect of the West Coast system and was a 49er coach and one of my heroes, his son was the athletic director there. So Bill Walsh used to come and stand in the end zone and watch our games. And I always, he was unmistakable. He had the gray hair, and he would stand with his arms folded and just watching our games because he liked just watching football at a smaller level. He just loved the game. And I had some really, really big games in front of Bill Walsh. And after one of them, my coach, Doug Cosby, told me, hey, Bill wants to talk to you. So I dropped my helmet and I jogged over to him, and I don't really remember what was said, but he told me, look, Nate, just keep doing what you're doing. You're going to have a shot at the next level. I know that. And when he told me that, like, tunnel vision after that. I mean, it all crystallized in my head. I had this inkling that I could do this, but after Bill Walsh told me I could do it, I believed it. I knew it was true. And so after that, there was really nothing that was going to deter me from pursuing that. And there'd be a lot more bumps in the road, for sure. So at the end of my career at Menlo College, I got chosen to play in the East-West Shrine game, which was a kind of an all-star game for college. And the day before practices started, I pulled my hamstring working out with my coach outside of our school. And so we go to check in, do all the welcome stuff, kind of like this, and I'm disguising this pulled hamstring that I have. I think it's going to be all right. I think I'm going to be able to work through it. And I made it through the first day of practice. But the second day of practice, we're doing one-on-ones. I'm running a slant. The corner's squatting in my face, and I come off the ball, and I try to break away, and poop, just popped. So that was the end of my week. And I thought that was the end of my career, basically, because I thought this was my one chance to show it. And now I don't have that chance. I'm the D3 kid. I can't afford to not be out here on the field. But Bill Walsh was there that week, and I remember bumping into him as I was limping from practice, and he said, just take care of that injury, get it right, you're going to have your chance. You're going to get into a training camp. And when you get into a training camp, then you got to do it. Then you got to make plays. And my hamstring did heal. I got signed to the 49ers. During the physical of the 49ers, they discovered a shoulder dislocation that I had in college, dislocated it a couple times, and just chose not to get it surgically repaired because I was trying to make it to the league and I had to work out for teams. And if I had surgery when it got hurt the second time at the end of my senior year, that would have put me in like May or June, and that was just too late. I needed to be there for minicamp. So I went through the physical. They detected the shoulder. That means I had to sign a waiver for that shoulder injury, meaning if I hurt that shoulder again, they can cut me. Typically in the NFL, you get hurt, they take care of your injury, and they cannot cut you while you're hurt. That's illegal. Unless you have a waiver that you sign for a specific injury, then they can cut you. So, of course, training camp's about a week and a half in, and it's in the morning, we have a practice, it's wet out there, I'm running routes on air, nobody's covering me. I go to running in, I slip, put my hand down, the shoulder pops out of the socket. So the trainer has to come and pull it back in, and then, it was pretty painful, but I had a shoulder harness sleeve on, and I fought through the end of training camp. And then Coach Mariucci, Steve Mariucci was the coach there at the time. He told me, Nate, I'd love to keep you on the practice squad, but our practice squad players need to be able to practice, and you're going to be hurt. So we got to let you go. The next day I got called upstairs and released. So what would have been my rookie year playing in the NFL, I spent living at home with my mom and dad. I had the shoulder surgery on their insurance and was rehabbing at just some random rehab spot in town. This was in San Jose, where I'm from. And but the Niners, on my way out the door, the general manager was a guy named Terry Donahue. And he told me, Nate, if you get this thing fixed, we'll sign you back after the season. You can try this thing again. And true to his word, after their season was over, they did sign me back. And so I was a 49er again, but this time there was a new head coach. So Steve Mariucci, the guy who was there the year before, they went 10-6, they made the playoffs, they won a playoff game, and he still got fired. That's how crazy the NFL is. And so I go into a new Niner team with a new coach, Dennis Erickson, who had been around, and they were hoping he could turn him around. But by this time, Dennis Erickson didn't know me at all, and I was stuck way down in the depth chart. Training camp was dragging on, and I was pretty healthy, but I wasn't getting a lot of reps. There'd be 10, 12 receivers in camp on an NFL team, and there's precious reps. I mean, you have a period of 10, 12 reps, 2 or 3 guys in every rep, and I'd get 2 reps, 2 out of every 12 reps. It could be a running play, a backside post. I was getting no action, right? So in the middle of training camp, second practice, I'm about to walk out on the field. I got my helmet in my hand. I'm taped up. And I get a tap on the shoulder. And one of the operations guys said, hey, Bill wants to talk to you up in his office. So So I go upstairs, I threw my helmet in my locker, I go upstairs, and Bill Walsh had an office there. He was a consultant. He said, Nate, sit down. I sat down. He said, we traded you to Denver. Your flight leaves in 3 hours. Good luck. And he put his hand out. We shook hands, and I walked out of that office and went and packed up my locker and went and packed up a duffel bag at home and got on an airplane and got in here at like 11 o'clock at night. The next morning I was in Broncos gear. So they handed me a helmet. They handed me a jersey, number 14. The guys were like, damn, man, yesterday number 14 was a short black guy. Now he's a tall white guy. What's going on here? But that's how quick it changes in the NFL. You know, one day your buddy's locker's right next to you. You come into work the next day, the locker's cleaned out, and it's a new guy there. So I was the new guy. I was the receiver just trying to stick with the team. So I had about a week to make an impression, strong enough impression to stick around. And from the get-go, I landed here, and one interesting thing about playing in Denver at the altitude. So when I played in California, I never wore gloves. I was a wide receiver, never wore gloves in high school, never wore gloves in college, never needed them. Even in training camp with the Niners, never wore gloves. Didn't have problems dropping the ball. I get here, the first day, the ball just whoop, jumped on me and went right through my hands. Because it's dry. It's dry here, and the altitude, the ball zips on you a little bit, so I put on gloves and never took them off. Those gloves are so good, man. They just catch everything. Just boop. You know, I had a week to make an impression. Then we had a preseason game, and that was my first kind of understanding and opportunity as to how important special teams is in the NFL, and even in high school and college. But I had never played it. I didn't play special teams in high school. I didn't play it in college. I grew up playing soccer, so actually 1 year in college I had to be the kicker because our kicker who came to camp sucked so bad. I had to kick off and do PATs and field goals that year, so that was difficult. To be a receiver going down the field and catching passes, we scored a touchdown, and then I got to kick the extra point. I missed a lot of extra points that year. I was just tired, you know, and just, fuck. So, but at the NFL level, I was, you know, that game in that last preseason game, I was covering kickoffs, and I made a big tackle on kickoff that my coaches really liked. And I don't know, I might have had one catch in that game, but I ended up making the team on the practice squad. So that was kind of a dream come true for me. That was a step towards achieving a career in the NFL, which is all I really wanted. I wanted that to be my job. And so I made the practice squad. There's 53 guys on each team, and at the time there was 8 practice squad members. So I was one of those 8. And my very first week on the practice squad, I bought a brand new Denali, which is not a wise purchase. Considering the lack of job security, when you're on the practice squad, you can get cut at any time. I went and signed my name and got a brand new ride and came into work. And I think it was the next day after that, Rod Smith, who was a receiver for us, and he was, you know, an old wily vet. He's really good on and off the field. You know, he'd put his arm around you and want to pull you aside and teach you the ropes and help you keep out of trouble. Well, he had a money meeting for the rookies, and he, after practice, and he pulled us all in there, and he said, guys, if you go to buy a $50,000 car, it's not just you signing your name. It's this. And he pulled $50,000 cash out of this bag, and he dropped it on the table, and I'm like, damn, Rod, you could have done that last week, man. So I got the $50,000 car outside. I actually had that car up until 2 months ago, and it got stolen. It got stolen twice in 3 months. Can you believe that? Once in Aurora, and then once near my house. And man, so this is an aside, but there's a car theft epidemic going on in Denver right now. So use clubs, don't leave valuables in your car. They're coming after them. But anyway, I had that car for 18 years. It served me pretty well. So my first year I was on the practice squad. Practice squad players, man, we just practice. We do everything everybody else does. We just don't play in the game. And that's pretty frustrating because you're going through everything everyone else does. You're lifting, you're running, you're out there on the practice field. In fact, you're actually practicing harder than everybody else does because you're doing every single rep of scout team for your defense, and then you're doing some reps on offense as well. But that's where I kind of got to cut my teeth against the best in the world and hone my game. Now, my game was in high school and college, I'm going to catch the ball no matter what. Me and that ball, we have a special bond. That ball gets thrown to me, I will die to catch it. That's how I felt about the ball, and I still do. If you guys throw me the ball right now, I would dive off that stage, break my nose, but I'll catch the rock. I promise you that. But that's not enough. You know, just that desire to catch the ball as you get to the next level is not enough. You got to learn technique. You know, you have to understand the concept of what you're trying to accomplish. And I understand Coach is getting you guys on that level now, which is very important. The game evolves every year. It gets more complicated and more put on you guys mentally than back in the day when I played. It was fairly simple. The more you know, the better off you'll be. So you come to practice every day, or I would come to practice every day trying to learn from Rod Smith. His locker was right next to mine. You know, I'd watch how he put on his shoes and put on my shoes the same way, and you know how he'd eat, how he'd cut his, you know, with his knife, and you know. But out on the field, this guy was just a pro. Everything he did was right. He had a reason for it, and he would express it to us and help us understand it. And that was what was great about him as a leader, is he would help the young guys. You know, there's some old veterans in the NFL who don't help out. You know, they're not interested in helping the young guys. They understand that their time is running out. All of ours is, and they don't want to help. But Rod was not that guy. Rod wanted his team to be the best it could possibly be. So every moment he had, he was helping us out. So specifically, technically speaking, as a receiver, I would basically tip off where I was going, and everybody does it to an extent. It's really difficult to completely sell that lie as a receiver, and that's what you're doing. You're lying with your body. I'm trying to get you to think I'm going this way when I'm not. That's a lie. And those DBs, those are the lie detectors. They're looking at your body and waiting for you to show them what you're doing. And I didn't realize how much I was showing of what I was going to do before I did it. And I would think I was doing something better, and then I watch it on film, and no, you're not quite there yet. Well, Rod was very, very good at telling that lie. If I'm going in, you really do think I'm going out. And it's not enough to just, you know, do a little head fake like that. You got to do, like, you guys have heard those kid songs, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, knees and toes, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. As a receiver, you got to sell it with your head, shoulders, knees, and toes, or else a good DB is going to read that. So I played receiver in practice squad, and until the very last game of the season, I got called up to the active roster because we were resting a few starters because we made the playoffs, and we were going to gain nothing if we won or lost that game. It was in Green Bay in 2003, so I got brought up, and I got to play at Lambeau Field. My first ever game was at Lambeau, and we lost. We got destroyed. We were playing with a lot of backups. Brett Favre was on fire. They had to win to make it to the playoffs. They did. They beat us. We ended up going to Indy the next week and getting our butts kicked by Peyton Manning and those guys in the first round of the playoffs. And I got some action in that game. And then that off season, my coaches called me and asked me if I would go play in NFL Europe. And I said, of course, sure. So oftentimes, back then, NFL Europe no longer exists, but NFL teams would allocate like 4 or 5 guys from their team who are young, didn't have a lot of experience, to go play in NFL Europe and get some game experience. So I went over and played in Germany, in Dusseldorf for the Rhine Fire. And we had our training camp in Birmingham, Alabama. No, I'm sorry, we had our training camp in Tampa Bay. And if you get hurt, then you got to fly to Birmingham to get the treatment. So I broke my pinky in training camp. I was sticking out sideways. They decided to fly me to Birmingham, Alabama to get it checked out. So went there for a couple days, came back to Tampa Bay, finished training camp. Then we flew to Germany. 3 games in, I tore my MCL. So I had to fly back to Birmingham, Alabama, spend 4 weeks there to get it rehabbed, got it cleared. Then I went back to NFL Europe, finished the season there, and when the season was over, flew straight back here and was back into minicamp. And this was in May or June of 2004. And when I was over there, I found out we had signed Champ Bailey. Or actually, we traded Clinton Portis for Champ Bailey. But I go straight from NFL Europe to back here lining up in front of Champ Bailey, who's, to me, top 3 corners of all time. And so I learned a lot going up against him every day. I was still doing a lot of scout team, and I got to go against Champ every day. And you know what? When I stepped up to the line of scrimmage against Champ Bailey, what was going through my head was, I'm going to torch his ass every time. And there's this thing where, you know, pundits and analysts and people on TV will say, well, this guy is better than this guy, and this guy, there's no, you know, this guy's a bench warmer, there's no way he's going to be able to. I never thought that way. And there's no one in the world who would tell you that I was the best football player that's ever lived, but I've never been on a football field and thought that guy's a better football player than me, ever. And I played with Hall of Famers, Champ and John Lynch and Shannon Sharp and all those guys, because I always believed in myself. And that's what you guys have to figure out, you know. Anytime you step on a field or a court or wherever you're at, you are the best player out there. There is nobody who can touch you. There is nobody who can stop you. You got to believe that. When the ball's in the air, that's your ball. Nobody else's. You gotta sell yourself out to get that. And so I never lost sight of that. And I think that's what helped me maintain my career, but that wasn't it. You know, there has to be two sides to the coin. There has to be that belief in the self and the work ethic that proves it. And so after my second year as a receiver, I was actually broke my tibia at the end of that season. And as I was recovering, I got a call from Mike Shanahan and said they wanted to move me to tight end. And I didn't want to do that. You know, I'd always wanted to be a wide receiver in the NFL, and that's what I believed I was. But he had a vision of me helping the team more if I could be a tight end. He had a past of turning big receivers into tight ends, and he thought I could get on the field more that way and catch more passes and help the team more. So I said, of course. And so I started gaining weight and lifting more. And I would do, like, right before I went to bed, I would get this Myoplex shake, and I put it in a blender, and I'd crack like 3 eggs and 2 scoops of ice cream and drink that right before bed. It was disgusting. And you know, the morning dump was brutal every single morning. But I gained weight. I gained like 25 pounds pretty fast. And so, that was hard on my body. So I was trying to deal with this new body, this new frame, while at the same time trying to run block these beasts of defensive ends who were like way bigger than me and way more technically sound. And it was very humbling to go to practice every day knowing I was going to get my ass kicked, because that's exactly what was going to happen. But these incremental improvements I was making me more confident. And, you know, I had coaches who believed in me, particularly Coach Shanahan, who kind of, you know, accepted there was going to be a level of growing pains there. But the hardest part about sucking at an NFL practice is you got to go watch it on tape right after. And there's no avoiding that. And you remember all your bad plays. And so you're sitting there in the meeting room afterwards, and you know when it's coming up, you know. And the coaches, they're going to milk it. They're going to make you feel real bad about getting your ass kicked. It was like a huge, you know, movie theater size screen in this room we sat in, and they'd slow it down, slow motion. He's got a laser pointer, and he's circling your body, and just what the fuck is this? What are you doing? But that kind of heat will make you learn real quick, and you got to have thick skin, as you guys know. And as Coach was talking about, he's going to coach you really hard, and then he's going to love you hard afterward. It ain't personal. These guys are coaching you to a standard of perfection. Really. That's what football coaches do. They want to see the perfect play. And if not, then they're going to coach you. They're going to tell you something you could do better. And you got to take that, internalize it, and try to make yourself better. And so I ended up playing 4 years as a tight end. It wasn't until the end of year 2, that I really felt comfortable as a tight end. That first year as a tight end, I didn't play much. I was, so 53 guys are on every team, but only 45 suit up for the game. So 8 guys are down. You know, they're not suiting up. And we'd walk into the locker room, and this one guy would be like, "You're down," and that means put on your sweats. You're not playing. So I got used to that year, that 2005 year. The crappy part was that was the year that we had the best team. Like we went to the AFC Championship game. We almost won a Super Bowl, and it was really hard for me to not be playing during those times. And it doesn't matter, you know, what level you're at. It sucks to not be playing, to be on a team and be sitting on the bench. And so if there's anything you guys can take from this, it's you want to be playing. You know, it's not about just getting to the school and getting the scholarship at the school that is like your dream school. It's about going somewhere where you can play. You know, going somewhere where you can have that experience with your friends. I played 6 years in the NFL, and the most fun I ever had playing football was at a D3 school in college. That's when I was having the most fun. That's when football was the most fun. In the NFL, it's fun. It has its moments, but it's also has its moments when it ain't fun. And, you know, we'd spend 4 hours every day in the classroom in the NFL, watching film, putting in the new stuff. That gets tedious. That's too much, if you ask me. But that's how it is. You know, it's an arms race. Everyone's trying to outwork and outcoach and outstudy and outfilm each other. And so that's what it's like. But it's also incredibly rewarding. And in year 2 as a tight end, I kind of assumed a role as a special teams player. And I hadn't played any special teams prior to that. But the next 3 years, I played kickoff return, punt return. And so another thing I want you guys to take away from this is you got to be adaptable as an athlete. The more things you can do for your coach, for your team, the more valuable you are to that team. And so I was able to play a lot of special teams. I knew all the offensive positions. I kicked, like I told you guys, so I was our emergency kicker for the Broncos. Never had to kick in a game, but had we had to, I would have been able to, you know, miss an extra point in an impressive way. I fought through a lot of injuries as well. As I gained that weight, it wasn't natural on my body, and my last 2 seasons in the NFL ended in injury. I tore my groin off the bone, tore my hamstring off the bone the next year, had to have surgery to reattach the hamstring to the ass bone, basically. The ischium, right? It's called the ischium, but I got a 3-inch scar right under my right butt cheek. It was a difficult rehab for sure. But I was pushing it. I was just pushing it as far as I could take it until something snapped. And even then, I didn't think it was over. The end was difficult for me to accept because this was my dream and I was living it. And yeah, there were a lot of bumps in the road and it was painful, but it was something that I loved. And when Coach Shanahan was fired at the end of 2008, they hired a new guy, Josh McDaniels, who came in, and as often happens with a new coach, he wants his own guys in there. And so I was one of the casualties of his new vision. But the way I got cut was they called my parents' house and left a message on their answering machine. That's how I got fired from the NFL. That's how it ended for me. My mom's like, honey, I think you want to listen to this. So I went and sat down on their bed and listened to that and called my agent, and you know, we talked about what my options were. And I called Josh McDaniels because the general manager said, you know, if you want an explanation from Josh, you can call him. He'll give you an explanation. So I called Josh, got through to his secretary, excuse me, and he said, yeah, hold on, Josh is in a meeting, hold on, let me get him. And he comes back 30 seconds later, he's like, he's in a meeting, he'll call you back. He took my number down, and he never called. So that was it. That was the end of my Broncos career. My hamstring was still messed up. I was training, trying to get back in the league. I had a couple workouts that summer. I had a workout in Philly. The workout went well, didn't get signed. Had a workout in New Orleans. Workout went well, didn't get signed. Had a workout in Cleveland. Workout went well. They kept me upstairs for like 5 hours waiting for the trainer to be done so he could give me a physical. Passed the physical, but then the GM said, all right, we're going to send you home today. We don't have a spot for you. So I thought, okay, this is just too much. You know, I'm squeezing back into the middle seat, going back home. And, you know, I've been working out like crazy. Nothing was happening. There was this girl that I was dating on and off at the time. And I get home, and she's like, let's go on vacation. I'm like, all right, let's go. So we went to Cabo. And then 3 days later, the Browns called me and said, no, we got a spot for you. So come on back. I'm like, all right, well, I'm in Cabo right now. They're like, all right, well, we'll get a flight for you. So I fly from there to Cleveland, and I was on the field the next day. My body was falling apart. I didn't want to admit it. Got through a week of practice, and then I got cut. And that was the end of it. And that was the end of my NFL life. Sadly, though, it wasn't the end of my football life. I was still wanting to get on the field, and there was this new league called the UFL, United Football League, that was starting. And this was back in, 2010, 9 or 10. And the Las Vegas Locomotives had drafted me to their team. And they held my rights. And the tight end coach had been calling me all summer saying, you know, we want you to play for us. And I'm like, I'm going back to the NFL. I'm not going to play for you guys. But when it was clear I wasn't playing in the NFL, that the season was starting without me, I took the guy up on his offer and drove out to Casa Grande, Arizona, which was where training camp was for the Las Vegas Locomotives. Jim Fossil was the head coach there, and you know, it wasn't the NFL, man. It was in the middle of the desert. They had just rolled the sod out in the middle of the desert. There was like these swarms of mosquitoes out there. The locker rooms were like in these portable buildings. The washer and dryer didn't really work. Our clothes were always wet. They had the equipment just in piles, and we were sifting through trying to find the stuff we liked. It was an appropriately sad ending to the journey, because for most guys, I mean, you know, we've all seen John Elway's press conference when he retires and walks away from the game, but that really isn't how it usually ends. For most guys in the NFL, they get fired, they get let go, and then they spend the next year trying to get back in because they still believe in themselves. The same belief that got you there in the first place becomes a hindrance on the way out because you don't know when to walk away. And that's just kind of how it's going to be, and you got to accept that there's going to be a little bit of a period of time, whether high school is the last football you ever play or college or pro, it's going to sting and it's going to hurt, and there's going to be a void there that you're never going to get back. And so it took me a while to realize it was over when it was over. But thankfully, you know, I had support of my parents, my family, and good friends, and I was able to move past it and find something else I cared about. But nothing can ever scratch that itch like getting out on a football field again. And you guys are kind of in the sweet spot of the optimism, and you know, you're healthy and you're playing amateur ball. It's not about money. And so really take advantage of this time, you know, to be with your friends, to play football with your friends, to tune everything out. There's a lot of noise out there in the world, but you have an opportunity to come together and do something special. And I hope you guys do that. And I'll be watching from afar this season. I want to thank Coach for having me out, and good luck. Thank you.